This is a clinical grade blood pressure monitor. Over several tests, I'm going to measure what 300 millilitres of beetroot juice does to my blood pressure and compare it to what the human trials actually found. Human trials have found beetroot juice up to 500 millilitres reduces systolic blood pressure by about 5 points on average. The more juice, the bigger the effect. This happens because beetroot is rich in dietary nitrate, which your body turns into nitric oxide, and nitric oxide tells the muscle in your blood vessel walls to relax. So the wider the vessels, the lower the pressure. However, the trial participants had higher blood pressure. In people with normal pressure, such as myself, the effect is smaller or barely there. The trials used beetroot juice, so I juiced mine to match the form by squeezing blended up organic beetroots using a nut bag, adding 200 millilitres of water to help blend the beets. This came to a total of around 500 millilitres, although I can't measure the dietary nitrates in these juices. So I conducted 2 tests, but I made a mistake on the first test as I did it after I went to the gym, and I may have simply measured my blood pressure returning to baseline over the course of the day. The second test I did was in the morning, in a fasted state, which gave me a more accurate result. This test won't confirm or disprove the trials, it's only going to show whether this works on me. But because the initial findings were interesting, I'm going to do this test several more times. Days before the first test, I took my baseline systolic pressure over 6 measurements throughout the day. Each of these involved laying down for 5 minutes before taking the reading. It started off low in the morning, rising after a meal before returning to a lower figure. On the first test, which was conducted 6 hours after weight training, I followed certain protocols to ensure other factors didn't influence the reading, including waiting 3 hours after the last meal and resting for 5 minutes before taking the measurements. The second test was done shortly after waking up, reducing external factors that may influence blood pressure readings, such as food and exercise. Now, the results. On the day of the first test, before I went to the gym, my systolic blood pressure was 118. Around 6 hours after leaving the gym, it was 125, and this was measured before I drank the juice. 3 hours later, my systolic pressure dropped by 6 points. However, this could be the result of coming down from the weightlifting session. The second test occurred 2 days later, where I fasted overnight and didn't go to the gym. My systolic pressure was 122. I drank the beet juice at 8:10 in the morning, and after 3 hours, I took the measurements. It dropped 5 points, which is consistent with the literature. My diastolic and heart rate also dropped. This could be a coincidence, it could be a placebo, or it could be a direct link. I'm going to do more tests on this because my systolic pressure could drop through the day anyway, and I'm still skeptical that the beet juice can measurably drop my systolic pressure, as these trials were mostly done among those who had high blood pressure. But I will continue this test and also continue to test my systolic pressure several times without beet juice to see if it drops during the day. I think it's useful to test the proven effects of certain foods on your own body. Therefore, you won't be guessing as much, whereby you're potentially consuming things that have little to no effect on you. Then you can start to refine a diet that benefits you on an individual basis.